Welcome to the Offshore Club's fun-filled, fact-filled, fast-paced blockbuster podcast, Coffee with Carib Carter, coming to you exclusively from where the sun never sets on the good life at a great price. And now, fill up your favorite coffee mug and join your expert and your guide, Carib Carter Clues.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Coffee with Carib Carter. Okay, we're going to do this thing again today, episode 60, and we have a great get together, a great show today because we have $1,000 listing Caribbean, which is a place where we may not have gone at all, but I know some of you have wanted me to. I'm not going to tell you where it is, but I'm going to give you a hint with this song. So roll it, Gary.
South of the border,
There you go. There you go, folks. Now that is, some of you recognize that voice, some of you don't. That is a hero from my childhood a long time ago. Gene Autry, back in the saddle again. And little kids, for you, those of you who are younger, you remember him from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Same guy. He was a cowboy. I was actually a Roy Rogers fan, but that was Gene talking about Mexico. And that's where our $1,000 listing Caribbean is going to be today. We're also going to interview a gentleman who is a longtime friend of mine, who is a brilliant economist. Now, before you say, I ain't watching this guy is, trust me, nobody's worse with numbers than I am. I can add 2 and 2 and get 5 and be perfectly satisfied with it. Okay, that's how bad I am with numbers. He is one of the few people who can help me understand what's going on with the economy. I mean, I understand it's in the hole, okay, but he can explain why for us, and which will then in turn help you know what to do. Dr. Larry Hunter, former vice president and chief economist of the Chamber of Commerce. This is a brilliant guy. And he's going to help you understand what's going on so that you can say, you know what, it ain't good, it's getting worse, and I'm getting out. Okay, I'm just putting it to you bluntly. That's why I'm having my good friend Dr. Larry Hunter on. Great guy, you're going to love him. He's coming up later. Plus, we have a tremendous motivational moment that I think you're going to like a lot. Three very inspiring people in a very short video that's going to help you go ahead and say, okay, I can do it. I can do this thing. I'm going to put together my plan B escape route. Okay. So we have all that coming up for you. But first, a very brief Mad Max moment. That's when I tell you, why, really, I get down where the rubber meets the road, telling you why you need to go where the surf meets the sand south of the border to the good life at a great price in Central and South America. I want you, and I'm going to make this Mad Max minute short, okay, because we have so much other great stuff coming. I want you to check out this article, okay? All right. Doug Casey, to me, is just an absolute brilliant man. A brilliant man. I read his material several times a week, okay? He is a no-nonsense guy. He has homes offshore because, he's already figured it out. He's figured it out a long time ago. And this particular article on the Freedom Gap and why it will soon close is a must read. It's absolute must read for you, okay? So go to International Man and check this out. Doug Casey. Let me just very briefly, what he has to tell you is today government controls everything. We're approaching a point where everything that's not mandatory is prohibited. That's a great idea. You don't want want to live like that. That's not what you were born to in a free country. And he makes the point, and he's absolutely right. He points out that when Biden's new tax plan passes, here we go. So on page 3 of the article, make sure you look up this article and read it. The U.S. will definitely have, by a large margin, the highest tax of any OECD country in the world. That's the 37 Western countries, okay, just to put it briefly there. Highest tax. You don't have to pay that. Get offshore, get away from it, escape it, okay? And he finishes the article by saying, I love this paragraph, in today's world, you ready? This paragraph, I'm going to read you, it's short. In today's world, that means you have to diversify internationally. That means you have to diversify internationally so that when the going gets tough in any one country, in our case, the U.S., including the U.S., you'll have a plan B for somewhere else in the world where you can transplant and escape it all. Okay, check out that article, please. I urge you. Check out the article. There it is again. Okay, that's the web page for it. All right, and that article is more than just worth your reading. It's important that you read it. Okay, just Google the Doug Casey Freedom Gap, and it'll come up for you. Doug Casey Freedom Gap, and it'll come up for you. And now to help you know what the situation is now, even in more depth and in very straightforward, simple terms that we'll all understand. Okay, I promise you. Even I understand that when this gentleman talks. Let's talk to Dr. Larry Hunter, who's going to set the record straight for us. Okay, let's do it. And now let's welcome the former VP and chief economist, as I said, of the Chamber of Commerce, my good friend, Dr. Larry Hunter. Dr. Hunter, welcome to Coffee with Carib Carter. How you doing?
I'm fine. Always a pleasure to be with you, Carter.
It's really a pleasure. We've been with each other a long time now. I think like 20 years.
It has been. Yeah, time flies.
We've been through a lot of ventures together. Some successful, some not so successful. But this is a successful one because, you know, the members of the Offshore Club, they're looking south of the border. They know something has gone wrong here, and nowhere is it more manifestly clear with the economy. I mean, it's just, you know, you and I talk about this all the time. We've got the government admits to 8.5% inflation. Really, you know, it's closer to 20, as John Williams over at Shadow Stats says. The real wages down 3%. What the hell's going on?
Well, let me give you my short answer. I think we are entering into a period that we haven't seen since Jimmy Carter. Rising inflation, rising unemployment, slowing economy. They called it stagflation back then. And I think that's where we may be headed. We may already be in a recession. If not, I suspect we soon will be. Inflation, as you said, has taken off 40-year high, even by their admittedly flaky numbers.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we're facing.
It's just unbelievable. I loved it. The inflation figures came out. The consumer price index came out at 8.5, and the response of the liars in the Biden regime, you know, Yellen, Biden himself, Powell, was but it's this. That's the peak. We hit the peak. A day later, what is a producer price index comes out.
Yes.
11.2%, the highest in history.
Yep.
And what does that tell us?
That's where we are. The question is, where does it go from here?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a repeat of the late 1970s? I suspect not, because if you recall, in the early 80s, when inflation almost reached 20%, chairman of the Fed, Paul Volcker, simply turned the screws on interest rates. And the rule of thumb, you know, that you can sort of remember is, in order to quell an inflation, a rising inflation, rates have to be brought up to 2 percentage points above the inflation rate. And that's how we got 20% interest rates back in the early 80s.
Wow.
And of course, combined with the Reagan-Kemp tax rate cuts, that was the medicine that stopped stagflation. But it didn't come without a price, because before the economy hit bottom and turned around, we went through a very serious recession as a result of the Fed's actions. Now, the Fed had leeway to do that back then, but in the intervening, 40 years, the Fed has gone wild, has simply created an incredible amount of new money. And we're in the position, or I should say the Fed's in the position today, that they're stuck between a rock and a hard spot. Because if they try to pull the Volcker technique out, with debt running, 120% of GDP now?
Yep.
If they try to do that, the first thing that's going to happen is the cost of debt service for the U.S. government is going to go through the roof. Okay? And so they're very tightly constrained on how much they can raise rates, which means if they don't go that route, they're going to have to accommodate more inflation. Right? So we're stuck in the horns of a dilemma. I don't think there's any way out. And if you compound, or if you compound all of this to what is going on in Ukraine and the actions Russia, Putin has taken in terms of the currency, where he notified the world that Russia would only accept gold or rubles to buy natural gas.
For oil and gas, yeah.
For natural gas. He hasn't quite got to oil yet. And he has backed off a little bit from that. It's not clear how stringent he's going to apply that rule. There was a hard peg. There appeared to be a hard peg to gold with the ruble. Since he's backed off a little bit and said, well, the gold price of the ruble is going to be negotiable. So we're in uncharted territory here. Excuse me. But one thing we know is Putin has set the stage for I hate to use the word, but a reset on the entire world monetary system.
Yeah.
I think the days of the dollar as the reserve currencies are now numbered. And so it's going to be very, very interesting times. But for the average American, what most people usually don't pay any attention to, this abstract economic theory and all of this, it's going to begin biting. It's going to be something that every person in the country has to pay attention to.
And I think that really drives it home, because you're right. People hear these abstract theories about the tying the interest rate to inflation, et cetera, how much it has to be raised to compensate the inflation factor. But I think sometimes they don't realize what you just said. This absolutely hits home. Let's take you mentioned the reserve currency. And I think when we talk about the dollar has been the reserve currency for 70 years now, I believe?
Well, certainly since Nixon closed the gold window and cut the deal with the Saudis. Okay, however many years ago that is, 50 years ago, 55 years ago.
Right.
So that's a long time, half century.
Time. And I think what a lot of people don't realize, and I think a bunch of our Offshore Club members do because they're very astute about this, but most people don't realize that if the dollar is not the reserve currency, then what happens to the U.S. trade agreements? What happens then to the family budget here in the U.S.? Can you translate that down for us?
Well, the immediate effect will be, and actually the cause, let's take what's going on with the ruble and natural gas. The minute Putin announced that policy, what that meant is the demand for rubles went up. Okay? Because now people were facing the prospect of, especially in Europe, were facing the prospect of having to pay for the natural gas in rubles. So that meant people had to scramble to buy rubles. In which case the relative demand for the dollar would fall. In other words, people don't want the US dollar as much as they did. And if this compounds itself and continues on, if, for example, the policy would come to include oil as well as natural gas, other important minerals that the world depends on from Russia, certainly wheat, other food items,
Right.
you can see how this would begin to escalate. As the demand for the ruble increased, as demand for gold increased, the price of gold goes up relative to the dollar, which means the dollar weakens, which means the demand for the dollar falls. And that's really what the reserve currency had been all about. It was sort of a free lunch because all of the world needed dollars to purchase oil. And what I think we're going to see is a world where the demand for dollars is falling, and that reserve currency status will begin to slip. And it could become an avalanche at some point, because these points in history are unpredictable. You never know when the last grain of sand on the pile is going to start an avalanche. So we're in very uncertain times.
Very uncertain times. Now, if the demand, let's bring it home to the family pocketbook, the family budget. If the demand for the dollar goes down, and now correct me if I'm wrong, that would mean the value of the dollar in my pocket then decreases, right?
That's right. Eventually, that's what will happen. The dollar will become less valuable, which means it takes more dollars to buy the same amount of goods, and that's called inflation.
Wow. So right now we know that real wages fell 3% year over year. If the dollar is no longer the reserve currency, we could see multiples of that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which is just a horrifying thought.
It is.
I mean, when the gas prices have already gone to 70%, and all of a sudden we're talking about the devaluation of the dollar. Biden is rarely right in anything he says, but a couple of weeks ago he said we're facing food shortage. We're going to have food shortages. Well, for once I think he may have gotten it right.
Well, one has to wonder whether our leaders can be as stupid as they appear, or if it's somewhat intentional. The policies they have been pursuing are totally destructive. Whether it's the sanctions they put on Russia, the sanctions they're threatening to put on China, stopping energy exploration in this country, shutting down pipelines. You could go through a litany of policies that simply make no sense economically. They make no sense in terms of the Constitution, that it's supposed to protect property rights and individual freedom. So I look at Washington. Thankfully, I'm not there anymore. So I look at it from afar now, and I think, either these are the dumbest people in the world, or they have bad intentions. And I don't profess to know what. I don't understand people's motives. All I can do is observe what's happening, and what's happening is very bad.
Exactly. And folks, we are not talking politics here. We're talking economics. And then on top of that, you see the government usually takes in about $2 trillion a year and spends $4 trillion. So Biden now proposes a $6 trillion budget. And what happens when the government escalates the spending like that by another up a third?
Well, let me reflect back on what we said earlier. We know that every dollar of new spending has to be a new dollar of borrowing. The definition of a deficit. We're already running $1 trillion+ annual deficits, which means there's a shortfall in revenues. Okay? So every time he throws in a new $100 billion, that's a new $100 billion in debt. Every time they increase the debt burden, it makes the economy more sensitive to what happens when interest rates go up. Okay? When interest rates go up, not only do home mortgages go up, not only do credit card rates go up, but the rate that the federal government must pay to entice people to buy their bonds to support the debt goes up. And it goes up incredibly fast. It's not a linear progression. And that's the reason I say they're stuck between a rock and a hard spot. You know, they either raise rates sufficiently to stop inflation, which means they put us into a horrible depression, or they allow inflation to get out of hand, or more out of hand than it even is. And if you add on top of this the talk coming out of Washington that they're going to be fiscally responsible by increasing taxes, you know, now you're adding just more gasoline to the fire. Okay, if rising interest rates are going to make people poorer, you can imagine what happens when they add more inflation and their real wages continue to fall. And that's the reason I say, boy, these people are either totally economically illiterate or there's some other agenda being played out. And I'll leave it to your viewers to make that judgment.
Well, if they raise the taxes, Biden has proposed a massive tax increase. Now, he says, as politicians do every time they raise taxes, it's only on the rich. It's only on the rich. But it's not only on the rich.
Never,
that's been a lie. What'd you say?
Yeah, it's never only on the rich.
No, you remember when they introduced the income tax in 1913,
right?
Woodrow Wilson, this is only on the wealthy. How'd that work out? And it will never hit middle class. That was what he said.
Right.
And then you had Obama's, I will never increase tax. Well, first you had George Bush the first, read my lips, no new taxes. And then he slapped us with the taxes.
Yep.
Then we had Obama's, I will never raise taxes on the middle class. And then Obamacare was the largest middle class tax in history. Now you have this guy with, he's going to put a tax on unappreciated, what's the term I'm thinking on stocks, the unappreciated
unrealized capital gains.
Unrealized capital gains. In other words,
I haven't heard that
money.
Now, I have to apologize, Carter. You've asked me on to talk about these things, and I used to be steeped in all of these numbers every day. And frankly, I just don't dig into these numbers anymore because I don't believe much of what they're saying. But I suspect what I'm going to say now hasn't changed much. The last time I looked, and this goes to your point about only raising taxes on the rich, even though the middle class has shrunk fairly dramatically, I'm pretty certain that the situation still holds today. There's simply not enough rich people in the country to solve this problem.
No.
Because the money, Willie Sutton answered when he was asked, why do you rob banks? Well, that's where the money is. Okay?
Yeah.
If you want to rob taxpayers, you can't just go after the top guys. They're simply, and we sort of lose sight on this because the gap between the richest of the rich and the middle class has increased, there's no doubt. But I imagine that if you aggregate all of the rich guys' money, it still ain't close to closing the gap. And so once they embark on a strategy or a policy of reducing deficits and putting a brake on the debt by raising taxes, there's only one place they can go. They've got to rob the middle class. Well, that's always the way it's been. And that's always the way it will be.
Oh, absolutely. Just the other day, I mailed off my income tax to both the state and the York. I'm in York, Pennsylvania.
Right.
Massive, massive. And I am definitely middle class. And here's what's galling. And this is what they're doing to the middle class. And folks, all of you out there middle class, this will resonate with. My wife said to me, she's from Honduras. She said, Amor, poor Kay, why are they taking so much money from us? And I said, here's why. Because if you go 5 blocks from us, then it begins the people in York who do not work. So they are taking my money in order to take it a couple blocks away and hand it out to those who have just decided they ain't working. And that's the absolute war on the middle class.
Yeah.
The war on the middle class. And which brings me to the point that I make over and over again. You want to get away from that? Move south of the border. You'll love this. Yes, I interviewed we have a new podcast called Charlotte's Wandering Web, Larry. She lives in Mexico, right? Charlotte Tweed. She's wonderful. And she said, I want to talk to you today. I went for a walk around my neighborhood. She lives in Ajijic, Mexico, which is where Lake Chalapa is. I'm pronouncing all this wrong, but somebody's saying, what is he talking about? But at any rate, she was saying there's a home here that sells, she said, for about $179,000. She said it'll probably sell about 2 million or 1 to 2 million in the US. But she said the property tax per year is $2.50.
Yeah. Speaking of housing, it makes me think, hearkening back to, is it your pocketbook that's going to get hit? And people who lived through 2008 will recognize this, the financial near collapse in 2008. People who own their homes may have a tendency to think, well, this won't affect me. Especially if they have fixed rate mortgages, raising interest rates, they may think won't affect them. But as we learned in 2008, what happens when this cascade begins, the value of housing begins to fall, especially when you're in a housing bubble, which I thoroughly believe we are. It's been stoked by demand, which has been stoked by just promiscuous money printing. But when that process starts and the price of homes begins to fall, even if you're on a fixed rate mortgage, you're going to find yourself in an equity squeeze. And that's exactly what happened in 2008. And people who thought they were pretty secure discovered, especially if they had taken second mortgages on their homes, they suddenly found themselves upside down in their mortgages. And so that's the real killer to the average middle class person, who has a fixed rate mortgage and a reasonable monthly price. And then, of course, those who found themselves in a nice equity position as the housing bubble pushed their equity up, all of a sudden they go out and take a second mortgage, they take the equity out of the house, and then all of a sudden everything reverses on them. So the ramifications of this and the many manifestations that it will take is not going to leave anybody safe. Everybody is going to be affected by this in one way or another. So.
It is devastating. Well, now, folks, I think you can see why I asked my friend, Dr. Larry Hunter, to come on. He is one of the few people who can explain all this in ways that even I can understand. And so I appreciate it. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Carter. Again, it's a pleasure to be with you.
It's fantastic. And we'll do it again as the situation gets worse.
Very good.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, folks, now I think you can see why Dr. Hunter was the chief economist at the Chamber of Commerce. He's a brilliant economist who can cut right through the how should I say this, caca, okay, to put it politely, and tell us what's really going on, okay? And what's really going on is not good. And your best solution, invest offshore, buy property offshore, move offshore. As the taxes rise, remember, you have that first 112,000 now of earnings, which is exempt from the IRS. That helps. Your property taxes are almost nothing in any Central or South American country. Okay. And your cost of living throughout Central and most of South America is about a quarter of what it is up here. So as it gets worse up here, it's just going to get better for you down there. Okay. So that's the bottom line on that. I think it's vitally important that you take advantage of everything Dr. Hunter has said in terms of making your what we always talk about with each other, plan B escape route. You just can't keep waiting. Don't wait. Don't, never be the last one off a sinking ship. Because remember remember the movie The Titanic, when it finally sunk, it sucked everybody down. It didn't get far enough away. And I don't want that for you. Okay. That's the whole purpose of your Offshore Club, to help you not to have to endure something like that. And one way of helping you not to endure it, time for a segue, is to go to our $1,000 listing Caribbean for this episode, which I absolutely love. Let me grab my visual aids here. Okay. I love my show and tell when we talk about this. And I have a great one for you. Okay. Remember at the outset of the show, we played Gene Autry singing, south of the border, down Mexico way. Well, we are going down Mexico way. And what prompted it was what I mentioned in the interview, the incredible interview I did yesterday with Charlotte Tweed. And make sure to watch Charlotte's Wandering Web. It's on every Tuesday at noon at Offshore.club. It's a great podcast where Charlotte, who's right there in Mexico, she's from actually Canada. She escaped that Castro's son. What the heck's his name? Pierre Trudeau's, the Trudeau guy, and moved to, she's in Mexico now. And her show is great, her podcast, where she tells you what life is like there, the cost of living, how pleasant it is, real surprises. And it made me realize I have not, every week we do this $1,000 listing Caribbean, where I show you some incredible homes for fantastically low prices. Okay. And I realized we haven't really taken much of a look at Mexico. So we're going to do it now. We went back to Vivian.com. Okay. We know Vivian.com. By the way, this is when you go to Vivian, okay, I got a bigger picture for you because it's sometimes, there you go. Vivian.com. Okay. And when you go there and you click on in the upper, see, I always say this to you, and I'm going to show you. See that little box there with the red box next to it? That's where you type in, like, Mexico is what I typed in this time. I typed in Mexico and a whole bunch of listings then. So I went to this one. Okay. I went to this one. And see how this is what you're going to see. You find that the listing, a little write-up about it. There's some details. And then look at usually there are a bunch of pictures. Look at all those pictures. The house. I'm going to show you some of those pictures now. So we are looking now at a beachfront for sale in Banderas Bay, Jalisco, Mexico. Okay. Banderas Bay, Jalisco, Mexico. Okay. So that's where we're going this time. Let me read you a little description here, and then I'm going to start let me do my map first, my big map. I know you know where Mexico is. Just okay. There we go. Mexico, big blue up there. By the way, Mexico is not Central or South America. A lot of people think it is. It's North American. It's kind of immaterial, but I just thought I'd share that. So we're going to Mexico, to Banderas Bay, Jalisco. let me read you a little bit about this. Ocean view bungalows located in an eco village. Private beach bungalows along the Pacific coast, pristine white sand beaches of Banderas Bay. Okay. Very, very pretty. Very, very pretty. Okay. And the one I'm going to show you is 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Okay. These are bungalows. Okay. And here is, I like to do this like when I used to write movies and stuff. Long shot, medium shot, close up. So there's we took a real long shot when I showed you the whole map. There is where we're going to. Okay. See there? See where the white there? Los Conchos. This is where everything I'm going to show you is right there. Look at that. You're right on the water. Right on the water. Remember, I keep telling you, buy beachfront. Buy beachfront. And don't wait. Will Rogers once said, don't wait to buy property. Buy property and wait. It's going to go up in value, especially beachfront. Okay, let's look a little closer. Here's Los Conchos, where the bungalow is, and I'm going to show you. Okay, let's get a little closer in. Maybe we'll call this a medium shot. There you are, walking down the beach. Look at that. Talk about pristine beach. Gorgeous, gorgeous beach. Gorgeous beach. And you're not going to be inundated with other people. You're going to have your privacy. This is a closed community, so it's very, very, very nice. Here's one of the bungalows. Okay, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Okay, and we're not talking anything fancy here. This is not a Mike Cobb community like Grand Pacifica in Nicaragua or Grand Bayman in Belize. This is a bungalow community. All right. This is for somebody who doesn't feel like they need all the amenities. They just want a wonderful life. It's definitely not off the grid. All your water, electricity, everything's there. But a nice private life, relaxed life. Okay. Inside, here you go. Let's walk inside. That's pretty nice. Look nice. Wood floors, big, beautiful windows overlooking the rainforest. And remember, you're within walking distance of the beach. Okay, the beach I just showed you. Bedroom in your bungalow. Okay. Very cozy. That's the word, isn't it? Cozy. This is very, very cozy. Here's your kitchenette. All right. I mean, I just love this. I love it. If you're single, if you're, maybe retired, right? What a great place to be. What a great place to be. You live the good life at an incredible price, because the price is, are you ready for this? The price for this is only $75,000 total. In the US, for that bungalow, you'd pay 5 times as much easily. 5 times as much. In that kind of location with that kind of privacy, it's your own private beach, for Pete's sake. I mean, imagine getting your own private beach on the Pacific. So it would have to be California in the US, what that would cost you. Here's what you do. Here's the number. Here's the number. Can you see the number there? Hold on. Let me get it real close. I'm messing this up here. Well, I'm going to read it to you because I can't get it up to you. And this is what you type in the little box, okay? 257540. You go to Vivian. Remember the little box I showed you? See the little box next to the empty box next to the red box? That's where you type in the number, the magic number that takes you right to this. See it there? See it there? Takes you right to this property. Talk to the people. I'd say you want 75, I'll give you 70. Well, it may go lower if you want. Remember, your Offshore Club doesn't make anything on this. Thank God that's not our profit model. Okay. We're going to do seminars, conferences, conventions, eventually big conventions, but helping you find these properties, that's our labor of love. That's what we do. That's what I enjoy. And thank God that's what I get to do. Okay. Now that's isolated. Okay. But it is right across. When you read the description, you're going to find it is right across the Banderas Bay from the town of Boca de Tamatlan. Tamatlan. It's hard to believe my wife is Honduran, and I speak such terrible Spanish. I should have asked her how to pronounce this before I came on. But you're right across, 1 hour across the water taxis go back and forth all the time from Boca de Tamatlan. Because, I'm a city kid. Remember, I was raised on the streets of Baltimore. So I love the pristine, isolated life there where it's cozy and comfortable and you have your privacy, just you and the people you love in nature. It's fantastic. But I also like, not nightlife. But I like, sometimes a little more of the hustle and bustle. So when you go across, here is where you're going to go. Okay. You take that water taxi, very inexpensive water taxi. And there's where you're going to end up. That's the word I was trying to pronounce. Okay. And because I always like you to see what all of your opportunities when you buy into a property like this, when you invest in a property, when you enjoy a property like this. Let's take a look at a short video, 2 minutes, a little more than 2 minutes, of Boca de Tamatlan. So you'll see this is where you jump in the boat, head on over, and this is what you enjoy when you want to leave the pristine beach. Let's roll it, super producer Gary. All right, very nice. The best of both worlds. Total privacy in your own little pristine beach community in the rainforest. I mean, you just you can't beat that. You just can't beat it. Okay. And then when you say, I think I'll want to go to a nice, really nice restaurant, again on the beach. Maybe do a little shopping. You jump in the water taxi, head across the water, and spend the day. And if you want to, spend the night over there in Boca de Tamatlan. Eventually, somebody's going to call me and say, "Man, you butchered that," but you saw the spelling, so you know what I'm talking about. And you've got it all. You have it all. You have everything you can want right there. Okay, so that's your $1,000 listing, Caribbean. Now, but that's still, even when you hear something that great, remember, $75,000 with financing. Remember, when you look there, you can say they have financing. So you might put 20% down and low payments for the rest, virtually no taxes. Okay. As much as you're spending on property taxes now, would probably more than cover your payments and for a beautiful home like that, beautiful bungalow, and you're all set. But there's still the matter of motivation. There's still the matter of, and we all face this. If you go talk to a neighbor about it, or a friend or family member, sometimes especially, they'll say, "Oh no, I don't think so." You're gonna hear from the naysayers, the doomsayers and the dream slayers. Remember, I always talk to you about those. They know they can't do it, so they tell you you can't either, but yes, you can. And just to help you make that decision so that you can do this, I want you to watch today's Carib Carter motivation. Motivational. I'm as bad with English as Spanish. You know, it's so funny. Parenthetically, a long time ago, I was the chairman for Republicans International in Spain. That's a long time ago. And I met with Reagan, okay, because it was back in those years. And he said, "Well, I guess you're fluent in Spanish." And I said, "Mr. President, I don't speak any Spanish." I told him, "When you're from Baltimore, English is a second language." Okay, so that's why I was having trouble with the word motivational there. English is a second language when you're from Baltimore. But this motivational minute, Carib Carter motivational minute, I think is going to help inspire you to buy that property. Grab it now, because it's a great place for you to live, and it's also a great investment. Gary, let's roll this short motivational minute. I'll be right back, folks.
Everything has been a learning experience for me, and I take everything as a learning experience, and I look to grow from it. And
sure.
And
not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does always actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
There you have it. The three people, by the way, for those who didn't recognize them, the first guy was Conor McGregor, who's a mixed martial arts champ, who overcame incredible odds as a youngster to make it to the top. Second guy, the short guy, Peter Dinklage, who a lot of you have seen in movies, okay? And he refused to be stereotyped as a, we would say, midget, right? Refused it and had trouble getting roles. It was a big struggle. He came from a middle-class family. He fought on, though. He's worth $25 million a day. But remember, he didn't listen to the naysayers, the doomsayers, and the dream slayers. Third one, most of you probably did recognize, Justin Timberlake, who, again, came out of nowhere to make it on his own. The reason they're in there is because you can do that. You can do that. And that what Timberlake quoted, the man in the arena, I just love, because you are the person in the arena. You're the person in the arena. And you're the person who actually, I'll read it to you again. The credit belongs to the person who does actually strive to do the deeds. That's you. You're going to do the deeds. You're going to buy that property, and do your plan B escape route, make your move offshore, do the deeds. Who knows great enthusiasms and great devotions, spends himself in a worthy cause. And even if things don't go entirely perfectly, knows that they failed while doing greatly. Okay, but you're going to succeed while doing greatly. You're going to succeed while doing greatly, because you know you're a member of the Offshore Club. So you know exactly, because of all the podcasts and the material we send you, what you're doing when you make your plan B escape route, when you make your move offshore. So as I tell you every episode of Coffee with Carib Carter, let's do this thing.